Claudia Teran Escobar est doctorante en psychologie à l'Université Grenoble Alpes en France et sa thèse porte sur InterMob, de la compréhension des obstacles et des leviers de la mobilité active et durable à l'élaboration d'un protocole d'intervention comportementale ciblant le changement de mobilité. Claudia Teran Escobar is a Ph.D. student in psychology at Grenoble Alpes University in France, and her thesis is about InterMob's understanding of the factors influencing active mobility and sustainable development of a behavior change intervention targeting the mobility change. À toi, Claudia.
Merci beaucoup pour la présentation, Laurine. I will switch to English now. So I am Claudia. I'm from Bolivia, but now I'm in France working in this PhD. I work under the supervision of Aina Chalabaev and Sarah Duchet. So already one of my supervisors, she's from physical activity, another one from geography. So that shows already that the approaches that I use are multidisciplinary. And I want to understand why people adopt some transport mode and how we can change this, how we can motivate people to start taking walking, or carpooling. So imagine that you have a magic wand and you, in the same swipe, you can improve health. So you can prevent non-transmissible diseases that kill a lot of people nowadays. And you can improve the health environment by diminishing emission of pollutants. So that will be real amazing. It might surprise you that I can tell you that actually I discovered, and already some researchers discovered, that active and sustainable mobility respond at the same time to health, because this can allow us to improve our health by doing physical activity, and we can actually diminish our carbon imprint. So when I talk about active and sustainable mobility, I talk about taking public transport, because you need to walk to go to the bus stop, so it's not next to your house. I talk about biking, about walking, and about carpooling. What is the problem in France is that most of the people use their car for transport. In France, for example, 63% of trips are made in car. And we already know that the car is an important source of pollution, all kind of pollution, so some that are detrimental, that are bad for the environment, but other ones that are bad for our health, like fine particles. And maybe you didn't know it, but it's a source of physical inactivity and sedentarity, because you pass most of the time already working on in a chair. It's the same when you take the car, you are not moving. So most of the people that use car for their transport, they are being more physically inactive, they are doing less exercise, less physical activity, and they are being more sedentary. And there are some studies that show that people using car all the time, they have more tendency to be obese. So there is an important part of physical inactivity related to car use. And we have on the other side the good transport modes, so biking, public transport, walking. The problem is that only 2.7% of the people bike to all of their trips. For all of their trips, only 9% of the trips are made by using public transport, and only 23% of trips are made by walking. That's not amazing if we compare with the use of car. And when we use active and sustainable mobility, we have a better well-being, we feel less stress, and we can have a better life expectancy. We can even win 1 year of life if we use active mobility during all of our lives. And it's an important source of physical activity, because, like I mentioned, when you do carpooling or when you take public transport, you need to walk. So it's not the same to bike, but at least you are walking more than when you take your car from your parking. And these recent studies show that we can diminish our CO2 emissions. If we decide to bike 1 day per week, only 1 day per week, instead of using car, we can diminish in 1 year 0.5 tons of CO2. So at the same time, we are answering to health problems and environmental problems. So how do we change behavior? We already know, and the governments and the researchers know, that it's important to promote active and sustainable mobility. So how have been doing these last years? We have two options. So the first option is to intervene to change hard or objective levers, and the second option is to use soft or subjective levers. Hard levers, you might already see them, these implementing bike lanes, implementing free public transport. These are more called changes in urban environment. But you have also economical measures, financial assistance or bonus, urban toll, making the gasoline more expensive. So these can be considered as hard or objective levers. Most of the governments use this kind of measurements. And then we have soft or subjective levers. When you try to sensibilize, to sensibilize people to say that the benefit, to talk about the benefits of bicycle, the risk of car use. So most of the times we only use one of these ones, and we will discover that maybe it's better to combine both of them. So after the first year of my PhD was about understanding what was being done and how it worked. So I discovered that there are a lot of limits at the theoretical level and at the methodological level. For example, when you go and you see all the things that have been done in France or in other countries, you see that most of the times the governments, they only intervene in one factor. Most of the time they think, okay, now we have bike lanes, everybody's going to start biking. So they only intervene in one factor, most of the time objective or hard levers. When we try to, when we have other approach and we decide, no, maybe we need to sensibilize, we need to inform people. So most of these soft interventions are only focused in attitude. So I'm just trying to make you think that car is bad and bike is good, and that's all. But you already know this. Intention is not the same than action. I can have a lot of good intentions, but that doesn't mean that I will actually do something related to my intentions. So I have this really good image that show how it works intentions. You have a plan, you have an intention. You want to be more ecological, you want to be good with the planet, but the reality is it's really different. You have a lot of problems, you have a lot of obstacles, and it's not that easy to implement and to have a real action, even if you have a good intention. Finally, most of the studies, most of the interventions, they don't examine why and when these interventions are efficient. Maybe they are efficient and for some people, for some ages, for some genders, for some socioeconomical status, we don't have this information. Maybe only people that are already motivated take bike lanes. So we don't have this information because most of the studies, they don't mention for whom and why these interventions work. And in the methodological level, most of the time the interventions, they don't evaluate the effects of the intervention. So most of the time we implement something, okay, I'm not going to measure if there is more people taking the bike or public transport. I don't really know how to measure this, so I'm not going to do it. Or I'm only to measure before and after. Most of the times we only interested in self-reported measures. So I'm only asking, so how many times this week you take your bike? How many times this week you take your public transport? And you know that sometimes people lie, sometimes people are not precise. So I have many problems when I only consider self-reported measures. Finally, really few studies have a long-term evaluation of the impact. Okay, maybe you constructed this bike lane. 3 months later, everybody's using this bike lane. But what happened 1 year after, 2 years after, 3 years after? So most of the levers, most of the intervention until now, they only measure for some months if they evaluate, and this can be a problem because you don't know if you have a long-term impact on behavior, on people's behavior. So the aim of my thesis is first to understand. So here you have two people. So we will call them Charlotte and Jeremy. Charlotte, she's really ecological. She loves the environment. She has 3 children, and she would like to take less frequently her car, but she doesn't really know how to start. And in the other side, you have Jeremy. Jeremy, he's a real sporty guy, but he lives in a high mountain, so it could be complicated to bike all the time from his home to his work. He already tried, but he stopped. He didn't know how to continue. So in my thesis, I want to understand what are the obstacles and levers that lead Charlotte, Jeremy, and all the people that are trying to change their mobility behavior. And I want to help them. I want to help them using a strong theoretical and evidence-based backgrounds in psychology, in geography, and I want to help them. And someday maybe they will stop using their cars and start using some other methods. So the first aim of my PhD is to understand mobility behavior. I'm interested in studying geographical, sociodemographical, and psychological factors that influence mobility behavior. When I talk about geographical factors, I talk about density, distances, access to transport. Do I have a car? Do I have a bus ticket? Sociodemographic, gender, age, presence of children, socioeconomical status, and finally psychological. I'm interested in knowing if these people consider as themselves as ecological people, if they have already the intentions of changing, if they already constructed habits of using the car or using other methods, other transport methods, if they have this self-efficacy, so they believe that they have the skills and the resources to start taking active mobility. And my second objective is to effectively promote active and sustainable mobility in urban contexts. So I'm mostly working in Grenoble, and I want to effectively promote and effectively measure how this change will happen. And I'm going to use something that is called behavior change intervention. The behavior change interventions are a set of coordinated activities aimed at changing a specific behavior. So I'm going to do some activities. I'm going to do something to change people's behavior. But at the same time, I'm interested in other psychological mechanisms that are behind these behaviors. I'm interested in habits, how the habits are automaticities. So automatically we do something. Automatically every morning I brush my teeth, I eat my breakfast, and then I take my car. I didn't even had a reflection about how I was going to go to my work. I only took my car. Attitudes, if we like or we don't like transport methods, perceived behavioral control or self-efficacy. Do I have the skills? Do I have the resources to take active and sustainable mobility? Social norms, what the people around think about biking. Maybe everybody thinks that it's not a good idea to bike, or maybe everyone around is taking their bikes. That will influence my behavior. So I have some examples, like school biking, where we teach people to bike in a city. We have publicities that say, oh, you need to reduce your consumption, electrical consumption, and other kind of examples that maybe you have seen using this behavior change approach. How I'm going to do it, how I'm going to arrive to attain my goals. So the first thing that I already did is to try to understand why people take active mobility. I had more than 500 respondents living in France. They answered an online survey. They had more than 100 questions last year. There was almost the same quantity of women and men. And I asked them questions about where they live. So I'm trying to understand the density of the place they live, if they have a car, if they have a transit pass, if they chain a lot of trips in the day, so they do a lot of travels during the same day, their sociodemographic context, what was their gender, the number of children, their socioeconomic status, and psychological factors. Did they already have the intention towards active mobility? Did they have the self-efficacy? Did they consider themselves as green people, as ecological people? And at the same time, I went to ask to experts in mobility. So what do you think? Why people have problems to take active mobility? What motivations, what resources might uh, able people to start taking active mobility? So I had all kind of experts. I had researchers, association members, public policy officers, and I did this qualitative study using interviews and focus groups. And for my second aim, I'm going to implement, because it has not been done, a randomized control behavior change intervention trial starting in September. So I will detail this more later. So the first results, these are preliminary because we are still analyzing the density of the domicile of the places where the people live. So I did the hierarchical multiple linear regression analysis. So what I want to know is which factors are associated to active mobility. So it's attention to this, because I'm not talking about causation. I can't say that this provoked this. I only know that this is associated with this. So what I discovered, so my dependent variable was the percentage of active mobility. So how often these people take active mobility for everyday travels. And I discovered that there are some geographical factors related to active mobility, to have a travel pass. So the people that have a travel pass do more biking and use more public transport. And travel motives. If you have a lot of reasons to travel every day, so you go to for your children, and then you go to your work, and then you go to the furniture store, and you do all the time. You're doing a lot of trip training, so you're training a lot of trips. You have more probability. You have less probability of using active mobility. I have sociodemographic factors related to active mobility, work percentage. People working more are taking less frequently active mobility. People having children over 12 years are using less active mobility. And physical health is related to active mobility. Like I told you, I can't talk about causes and consequences. So maybe because you take your bike, you are in better physical health, or it's in the other sense, because you are in good shape. You are taking your bike all the time. Finally, I discovered some psychological factors related to active mobility. So it's not only about geographical factors, it's not only about sociodemographic factors, but it's also about psychological factors like intentions. So people that have intentions are the people that are taking more active mobility. The same for people having the self-efficacy. Something really interesting is that the people that take more active mobility is the people that hate more the car. So maybe I'm taking active mobility because I don't really like car. I find it horrible. So that's why I'm taking active mobility. And finally, people that are taking active mobility are people that have developed habits. So it's some kind of automatical for them to start to take everyday active mobility. So these results resemble some other results that I had in other study that I published during the COVID that was about physical activity. Most of the times, there are always psychological factors related to behavior, to physical activity or to active mobility. And most of them, it's more about intention and self-efficacy. So when I talked with the experts, they told me, okay, so we believe most of them, they agree that the motivations of the people are more about the environment. The people is motivated to take active mobility because of the environment, because there are some physical constraints. Maybe I don't have a parking next to my work, so it's hard to take my car. Because of physical health, because of social norms, as I told you before. Maybe if everybody's doing bike around me, my colleagues, my friends, I'm going to feel the pressure to start doing it too. And maybe these people consider economic gains. What resources they think that a person needs to start taking active mobility? They need money, of course. They need time, because maybe in public transport, it will take me 40 minutes, and in car, it takes me only 20 minutes. So I need more time. I need social support. I need that the people around me support me. I need more work-related aspects, like for example, to have showers. If I bike to my work, I will transpire, so maybe I need showers, or I need a place where I can change. Maybe it's also something about the territory. If I have correct transport, if I have transport plans, digital tools that help me to start using active mobility, and maybe I need self-regulation. So it will be hard. It will take me some time. So some resources, some psychological resources. So I need self-regulation. And most of them, they agree that the obstacles of active mobility are the lack of knowledge, that actually a car is very comfortable and it's very performant. So it's hard to stop taking car. Most of them talk about a car culture. We're all the time watching TV cars, and it's so that it's cool to have a car. It gives me freedom. So we need to fight against this car culture. And about the context of starting active transport, most of the experts are agree that work schedule have a work during the night, staggered working, start working at 8 a.m. all the time. Maybe that will obstaculize, that will make harder to me to start taking other transport methods. Lack of access. If I live in a rural area, or if there are transport strikes, it will be hard. And maybe it depends on how my family is composed. So the second aim. So now we understand better why people takes car, why people takes active mobility. So now we want to change it. So what we are going to do with my research team, so we are going to use a randomized control trial that is a really robust methodological method. And we will have 400 participants, and we will divide them in a control group or in an intervention group. We are searching for habitual car drivers that drive at least 4 days per week, between 18 and 70 years old, living or working in Grenoble, and they need to be already motivated to change mobility. So I'm not trying to convince them to start doing it. They already want it. And if this is based in our theoretical research, that for these cases, it's better to work with people that is already motivated. We're going to give them 6 free months of transport or bikes, so they can choose. They can choose to have both. They have only one. They have also the option to take an electrical bike. And during the 6 months, they are going to have meetings with our behavior change and mobility experts. And we are going to give them some personalized transportation advices. We will see where they live, where they work. We are going to tell them which transport they can use for going there. They can even combine 2 or 3 methods, transport methods. We are going to do goal setting. So they are going to tell themselves when, how, and where they will start their changes. And they will try to do this every week, because like this, they will be able to formate habits. And then we are going to prevent the possible obstacles to start using active mobility and to implement their intentions. They will receive once per week a motivational text message that will encourage them to planning. So they need to keep planning. That's how it works, change. You need to plan. You need to say how, when, how you're going to change. And also to encourage self-feedback. So maybe now that I'm biking more, I feel more energetic. I feel that I have more energy, that I'm in a better mood. So they will recognize the changes in their selves, and that will motivate them to start to keep going. How we are going to measure the behavior? I told you most of the time we are only using self-reported methods. So we are combining a lot of stuff. We are combining accelerometers that are used for measuring physical activity, GPS, pollution captors. We want to know if they are less or more exposed to air pollution now that they are changing their behavior. They are also going to answer to use mobility diaries for tell us in more detail how many they were when they took the bus, at what time, which places, questionnaires about the psychological mechanisms, their habits, their attitudes, and their and other psychological mechanisms, and we are going to follow them for 24 months. So during 2 years, they will be in our study. We are going to see them 8 weeks during these 2 years, and they are going to wear these captors and to answer our questionnaires and our mobility diaries. 8 weeks spread over 24 months, over 2 years. So we want to know if 2 years later they keep using bicycle or they stop. So like I told you, we're a team and we're a big team. We have a lot of laboratories working in Grenoble. And we are also working with the Grenoble Alpes Metropole, that is the mairie of Grenoble. And it's important to understand, because we are an interdisciplinary team, that we are interested in different aspects of this behavior change, this mobility behavior change. Obviously, we want to evaluate the efficacy of our intervention. We want to know if it works. When you do it experimentally, when you measure real behavior, when you follow the people during 2 years, is this really working? We also want to know, to quantify the benefits of mobility change. So we will be able to measure physical activity, exposure to pollution, and quality of life. So we want to show that maybe when you change mobility behavior, you are actually improving your life, improving your physical activity, you are less exposed to pollution, and you have a better quality of life. Finally, we want to identify the levers and the obstacles to mobility change. Okay, so we are trying to do it, we're trying to change behavior, maybe some contexts, maybe some situations make harder to change. So we will be able to identify the geographical context, the socio-demographical context that make it difficult to change behavior, even when you use this intervention, this behavior change intervention. So just like as a conclusion, our work is trying to show that for motivating people, for actually provoking change, you need to put everyone together. We need the researchers, we need to have a role against climate change and trying to improve health. But we also need the people. If they don't want to participate, if they don't want to do it, we need them. We need governance, because maybe it's about infrastructure, lack of infrastructure, lack of good transport, and we need associations and organizations. So we need all to work together. We can actually improve health, we can actually mitigate climate change, but we need all of these people to work together and to start doing science, but doing science with the support of the citizens, the governments, and the associations, organizations. So if you are more interested in the project that is called Mobilair, I'll leave you here the website. And if you have any questions, you can do them in English or in French. And I hope you enjoy the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your great presentation. Well, we have a question for you, Claudia. So what I suggest is we only ask you these questions, and then we will continue the discussion during the workshop. Is it okay?
Yes.
So here is your question. Here's the question for you. Do you think that the psychological motivational factors that you found for mobility will be the same for other activities? For example, have more healthy diets, change consumption patterns?
Before doing my PhD, I was working with other kind of problems. I was more about reactions during epidemics. And we don't have always the same psychological mechanisms. Sometimes they change. Most of the time you find that intention and self-efficacy are there all the time, but you need to understand first the behavior. And because maybe this time, for example, about vaccination, COVID vaccination, it's not about intention, it's not about self-efficacy, maybe it's about beliefs. You think it's dangerous. So you don't need to change the intention, you need to change the idea about this being dangerous.
Antoine Castet and Thomas.
So not all the time. So that's why you need to understand behavior, and then you need to try to change it.
Okay, so well, I will have question for you for two reasons. First of all, is like you do stuff which is close to that we do in economics, you know, like a regression. And I saw your model that you're using, so I have a few questions for your models and the methodology that for the first part of your project, and for the second part, I will have also a question about your randomization methodology, because this is again something that we do a lot in economics. So we can jump to it during the workshop.